Welcome to the Heartland Arms podcast. I'm Michael, and we're going to go over family and firearms today. Figure it's getting into February now, so we wanted anybody that is thinking about starting a family or going that route, or having a loved one in the house, kind of going over what you should expect there. So today, it's going to be about being prepared, responsible, and safe at home. Okay? And if you like our content, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. It's really hard. The algorithm does not like our show, even though we're educational and we don't have real firearms. Just simply saying that word doesn't, the algorithm doesn't like us. So make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. So we're going to go over a couple things. So if you have anybody in your house that is not educated in firearm, if you don't live alone, you may want to consider a storage, some type of storing device for the firearms. Now, some states actually have laws that if you have a firearm, I don't care if you're home alone, I don't care if you're the only one that lives in that house, you still have to have it locked up. So make sure you're always checking with your state and local laws. But you and you, I would always recommend having a safe, whether it's a small little safe or a big safe, depending on what your needs are. I would recommend it. So I would prefer the safe over like the trigger locks. I'm not a very big fan of the like trigger locks. I like a safe. I like a container what they go in, and they have different like biometrics. They have like the finger codes that you can do. There's keys. There's that kind of stuff. Because if you're not leaving and you leave the house and you're not taking it with you, lock it up. That's what I would recommend. Anybody comes in, if you live in an apartment, maintenance comes in, you know, that's the biggest issue that I have is maintenance could come in if you're in an apartment and manager comes over for an inspection or they need to do something in there. Yeah, you might want to keep it locked up because if you live in a house, that might be a little different. But if you have a house, there's a family there, so you have to look at. My firearms have been locked up for as long as I remember. They've served more jail time than any prisoner in the world. Just because that's the way it goes. Now, I also did introduce my son to firearms, my wife to firearms. My daughter, when she was living with me, she had that. She's grown and on her own. Her husband has firearms. He has them locked up. He has little kids, but they're also in an apartment, so that makes sense there. So, real life situations that we could cover why they need to be put away. I have a cat, and I love my cat, but my cat's a pain in the rear because the cat likes to knock things off. And it would really, I don't, might do it on purpose, but if I had a firearm just laying on my dresser, I'm pretty sure my cat could figure out how to pull that trigger and be swatting at it and pull the trigger and put a hole in my window, wall, shoot a neighbor. Yeah, so I like to keep all my stuff locked up regardless. Just me. Now, I've had the conversation with my son, and a lot of times people ask, when is a good time to do that? When's the age appropriate conversation that you have to have with your children? And with my daughter, she saw me carrying quite a bit. I'd come home, and she would see it. So I had to have the conversation with her at a really young age, and it was, that's not a toy. You don't play with that. Basically, the general speech that you give to someone that you don't want them. you don't want to make them sound like they're scary. You don't want to scare them from it, but you want to make sure that they understand the seriousness that goes along with those and what goes on. And I had the conversation with my son Mikey, and I remember I wanted to see what he would do. I like to run scenarios. So I had a unloaded firearm. I was in the house. My wife was in the house. Um, I had some of his toys in the living room, and I put that unloaded, purely safe firearm right in the middle, and he couldn't do anything. We know it was a safe situation, but it was a scenario that we wanted to try. And I wanted to see what he did. So he immediately, my wife says, "Hey, you need to go get your toys out of the living room." He goes down, tries to pick up his toys, and he comes running up and says, there's a gun laying down there. That's what I wanted. I wanted him to alert me when something's like that. Because if he found a gun in the real world, he's playing outside and he runs across a firearm because yeah, the gangbanger down the street, threw it out the car window and it hit a bush, and he's playing in that area, and he runs across a gun. I don't want him to look at it and go, "Oh, look, a toy." I didn't want that to happen, so I introduced him my way, and we had a conversation about if you see something like that, you need to find an adult. You need to come get me, go get a teacher. You need to get an adult and let them know, hey, and you're not to touch it. So he ran up to my wife and said, "Yeah, there's a gun in the middle of all my toys." And she says, "Well, just pick up around it." And we watched, and he would not cross the firearm. He wouldn't, and let's go to the split screen here. So if it's laying there, he would walk all the way around it. So if there's a toy over here and he was over here, he'd walk around to pick it up. So that's kind of what we did. And, we made sure it was safe. It wasn't, made sure it was a safe situation that we could practice that training drill. I really like that we did it that way. I wish I did that with my daughter. I didn't. I did my daughter a different way. Um, but I wanted I wanted him to almost stumble across it to see his mentality, how he reacted, what he did, and go from there. Now, now he's an adult now, just about. So now, I mean, under supervision, he can go get a firearm. He can go get something for me. He can help set up things because he's been trained with firearm safety. He's been to the range. He's gone through everything with me that I know that he's safe. However, the firearms are still locked up, and the ones that he has access to, um, there's keys, and don't think that, oh, I have the firearms thrown in a safe and I have the key on my key ring. Well, unless you keep that key ring with you at all times, if you have a hook that you hang it up with, kids can have access to it. So don't think that, oh, I have the guns in a safe, I don't have to say anything to my kids. That's the wrong way. That is not the right way to do it. You want to make sure that if they really, really wanted access to it, kids find a way. They've snuck your Christmas presents. They spied on things. They get into things. They're kids. That's what they do. Um, so education plus having them secure is a good idea. The guns are are locked up, ammo separate. There's not a loaded firearm that he has access to. The one that I carry for every day is in a biometric safe that he doesn't have the key to and he doesn't know the combo to. That's something that me and my wife know. She has hers, I have mine. Biometrics, we can access it. Those are the load. That's where the loaded firearms are. I don't let my son have access to those. Um, if he needs to go get a rifle for me, well, he has to go get a key for the lockbox that has the gun keys in it. That's that's how serious I take this. Is I have the gun key, all the gun safe keys in a lockbox, and the key for that lockbox is in another lockbox. So I built redundancies that I will know when something happens like that. And that's where I give him access. Okay, I need this. Um, and he only started getting access to that when he became old enough and I was confident enough that he knew enough about it that he could have access to that. Especially with him being 18. I mean, now that he's 18, he can actually get his first rifle or his first shotgun. He he can't buy a pistol or a handgun, but yeah, that's some things that once as they're going through and as they're growing up, you need to grow with them. If you have firearms, I would suggest teaching them. That way they know what it can do, what they can't do, and make sure that the only access to firearms they've had was a video game, and that video game teaches you, well, if you shoot someone, they just respawn. That's not how it works in real life. When you shoot someone, there's consequences, and you can't go back. You can't go to a previous save spot. Doesn't work that way. So I think teaching respect and rules instead of fear is the better way to go. The also understand the consequences of actions with it too. I want to make sure they understand. If you do this, you take a gun to school, your life is over. That's just it. You're done. And there's plenty of school shootings that I've used as an example of showing him, hey, if you do that, your consequences are worse because you're going to want to turn yourself into the police and not deal with me. I say that, and a lot of times we joke about a lot of stuff, and you know as a parent, there's a lot of times where we have to bark and make a big scene just to make a point. So, but I don't want him to be afraid of a firearm. I don't want him to fear it. If someone pulls a firearm, yeah, he knows what he's got to do to get out of there. Stay safe, but that's not the firearm. That's the person behind the trigger. That's who you have to worry about. The firearm is just a tool, and bad people use tools in bad ways. Good people use tools in good ways. So it's making sure you're consistent across the board with how you're handling these so they learn. That is what having a family and firearms means. It means a lot of taking a little extra time with them, taking them out, having the understanding, and understand that it's not a toy. It's a tool. In the right hands, it can be good, and in the wrong hands, it can be bad. So, again, I would recommend storage. Don't rely on just educating them. Education and storage, and also don't just rely on storage. Those two kind of have to go hand in hand. That's a marriage that needs to happen. And if you're watching this and go, wow, I haven't talked to my kids about firearms, and they're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, maybe that should be a discussion that you in your family with the adults have to have a conversation with to find out when you want to talk to the kids about it. Um, they're tough conversations sometimes, but I encourage you to have them. So make sure you do like, subscribe, and follow. It's really hard to get our material out there. Algorithms don't like what we do. So make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. We're on all platforms, all podcast players, YouTube, and we'll continue on all these platforms. And hopefully we don't get any strikes because they like to just randomly strike you and give you strikes to take your stuff down. So we're going to be safe, educational, and we're going to try and do things the right way. So make sure you stay safe and keep watching.